She believed her mother died peacefully until one photo uncovered the truth. They told her it was an accident, a fall down the stairs, a peaceful death in a quiet home. That's all Valerie knew about the woman in the photo, her birth mother, Clara. A soft smile, a story too short, and a memory kept carefully out of reach. For 21 years, she didn't ask, didn't want to. Maybe because the lie was easier than the hole it covered. But lies don't stay buried forever. Not when a single photo folds wrong. Not when the woman who raised her starts avoiding eye contact. And especially not when the past begins knocking in the voice of a stranger who knows her name. The truth didn't come gently. It came with wind in the trees, paper under her fingers, and a face she no longer trusted. And that's where this begins. Before I begin, let me say this. I didn't expect anything to change. After all these years, silence had become my only certainty. I'd stopped asking, stopped hoping. The town of Winfield had buried the story. Like an old bruise, everyone agreed not to touch. And maybe I had too. At least, that's what I told myself. Until the photo came back. The envelope arrived on a Monday. No return address, no handwriting, just my name printed on a sticker. I stood on the porch holding it, hearing the faint creak of wind chimes overhead and the distant hum of a delivery van pulling away. It felt heavier than a photograph should feel, like something had traveled too far to get here. Inside was a single Polaroid, faded, slightly warped, the kind you'd find in a junk drawer, yellowing with age. But the image was clear. 15 children, one adult, a wooden trail sign behind them that read Red Creek Camp, July 1996. And there, on the far right, was my daughter, June. Her hair was pulled into a ponytail, slightly off-center, the way I used to do it when we were rushing to catch the bus. She was smiling, but not to the camera. She was looking at someone beside her, someone just out of frame. But it wasn't June's face that made me sit down on the porch step. It was the adult. The person standing with the kids was clearly Clara Wexler, principal of Winfield Elementary. The same woman who had testified, under oath, that she hadn't been on the field trip that day, that she had called in sick, that she'd stayed home with the flu. I remember her words like lines from a bad dream. I wasn't there. I wish I had been. I could have stopped it. I clutched the photo tighter. My hands were shaking. For 27 years, no one had questioned her story. Why would they? She had mourned with us, spoken at the candlelight vigils. She'd retired early, citing grief and burnout. The town had built her a bench near the school garden with her name carved in brass, for her service, for her heart. But now I was looking at proof, quiet and damning, that she had lied. I wanted to scream, to run to someone, but who? After all this time, who still cared? Most of the other parents had left Winfield. Some had passed away. Others had simply shut down, like old radios that stopped catching a signal. I used to be one of them. I walked inside, clutching the photo like it might evaporate. My living room hadn't changed in decades. Same floral couch, same framed newspaper article above the mantel. Tragedy at Red Creek, school bus vanishes. I used to read that article every morning, as if repetition might unlock something I had missed. a detail, a quote, a clue. I sat at the kitchen table, the light slanting through the blinds in soft stripes. I laid the photo down. June stared back at me, a frozen moment in time I'd never seen before. And next to her, Principal Clara, alive, well, lying. I picked up the landline phone. Yes, I still use one. There's something about its weight in my hand that calms me, like a relic from a world that made more sense. I dialed the only number I knew. It'd still work. Helen picked up on the third ring. Her voice cracked just a little, either from sleep or from the years. Miriam? I got something, I said. My voice was low, like someone might hear. A photo from Red Creek. There was a pause, heavy and long. You're sure? She's in it, Clara. Helen didn't speak for a moment. Then, just a breath. You should come over. I arrived at Helen's house just before dusk. The sun was low and warm, bleeding into the pine trees behind her backyard. She lived alone now. Her husband had left years ago, said he couldn't live in a house full of ghosts. Helen never remarried. She said some women are built for waiting. I never asked what she meant by that. She looked older, of course. We both did. But her eyes, they were still sharp, like a hunter's. She opened the door and didn't smile, just pulled me in and locked it behind us. I handed her the photo. She stared at it a long time, then set it down, face down. You know what this means, she said. I nodded. It means she lied. It means someone else lied too. We sat in silence, the kind that hums between people who've already buried too much. Helen finally looked up. You still have the yearbook? I went quiet. The one from '96, she continued, with all their names. Maybe there's something else in there we missed. I didn't want to open that book again, but something in her voice made me realize I might not have a choice. Not anymore. She poured us both tea. Chamomile, the kind she used to keep for when June came over to play. The cup felt warm, but not comforting. You think anyone else got one? She asked. Maybe. Or maybe they were sent just to you. Maybe whoever took it wants you to know. That night, I drove home with the photo in my coat pocket. The streetlights flickered as I passed. Somewhere inside, I could hear the faint ticking of a clock. Not real, just a sound my mind had learned to fill the silence. As I parked in the driveway, I took the photo out again, looked at Clara's face. Her expression wasn't quite a smile, not quite anything. It was the kind of expression you make when you know something no one else does, when you've already decided what parts of the truth to bury. And that's when the thought hit me, like a cold wind through the window. If Clara lied about something this small, then what else was she hiding? I didn't sleep that night, not really. I laid in bed with the photo on the nightstand, the lamp still on. Outside, the trees rattled in the wind, like they were whispering something I couldn't quite hear. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw June's face. But not the face I knew. The one in the photo. Frozen. Caught mid-laugh. That version of her didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to something else now. Something bigger. Darker. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I needed to see Clara Wexler. She still lived in Winfield. At least, as far as I knew. After she retired, she'd bought a small house near the river, the kind with a white fence and a porch swing that never moved. People said she kept to herself. gardened, read a lot. Some thought she might have left town after all the grief, but she hadn't. No one ever really leaves Winfield, not when it still owes you something. I didn't call. I just drove. The air smelled like cold earth and pine bark. Old autumn. That kind of weather that creeps into your sleeves no matter how many layers you wear. Clara's house looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe it was just her. She answered the door in a gray sweater, holding a mug of something steaming. Her hair, once tight and silver blonde, was loose now, falling softly around her face. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. "Miriam," she finally said, "it's been years." I didn't bother smiling. "I need to talk." She glanced behind her, like she was checking for someone, then opened the door wider. "Come in." The house smelled like chamomile and cinnamon. A fire was lit in the corner, low and flickering. She gestured to the armchair across from hers. I didn't sit. I pulled the photo from my coat pocket and held it up. Her hands didn't tremble. She didn't even blink. "I found this in my mailbox," I said. She set her mug down gently. "I see. That's all you have to say." She walked over, took the photo from me, turned it in her hands like she was trying to find something on the back, something that would let her lie again. But there was nothing. Just silence, and a date burned into the front. July 1996. "You said you weren't there?" She nodded slowly, eyes still fixed on the picture. "I did. You testified under oath." Another pause. "I know." I waited for her to speak, to explain, but she didn't. She only walked over to the window and stared out at the yard. "You don't understand, Miriam," she said softly. "There are things you never knew, things you were never supposed to know." I stood frozen. My heart felt like it was clawing its way up my throat. "Then tell me," I whispered. "Tell me what really happened at Red Creek." She didn't turn around. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. The trip, it was planned, approved. But the night before, I got a call from someone I didn't recognize. They told me not to go, told me to stay home, said it was important, that it was for the children's safety. My breath caught. "You believed them?" I didn't know what to believe, but I panicked. I called out. I told the staff I was sick. I watched the bus leave from my kitchen window, and when it never came back, I convinced myself I hadn't been involved, that I couldn't have stopped it. I stepped closer. "Then why are you in the photo?" Her voice cracked now, just a little. "I went. After the bus was already gone. I drove to the camp on my own. I thought maybe they just got lost. Maybe I could help." "And?" She turned to me finally. Her face looked smaller than I remembered. Fragile. "When I got there, the camp was empty. The sign was there. The trail markers, but no kids, no staff, no bus. Just silence. And then someone handed me that photo. A man, tall, dark jacket. Never said a word. Just gave it to me and walked into the trees. I felt like the room tilted under my feet. You never told anyone?" I was afraid. Afraid no one would believe me. Afraid of what I saw. I narrowed my eyes. "What did you see?" She looked away. There were tire tracks, but not from the school bus. Bigger, deeper, like military grade, and a badge half buried in the dirt. I still have it somewhere. My hands curled into fists. This wasn't just a lie. This was a cover-up. Why didn't you come forward? Because I was told not to, she whispered. A week later, I got another call. Same voice. They said if I spoke, the rest of the children would die. I froze. What do you mean, the rest? She looked at me now, eyes wet, voice shaking. They weren't all taken, Miriam. Some came back. My stomach turned. Who? She hesitated. I can't tell you that. I've already said too much. I stepped back. The walls of her house felt like they were pressing inward. You've been living with this for 27 years? She nodded once. And you're only telling me now? Because someone wants you to know. Whoever sent that photo, they want it reopened. And they knew you wouldn't stop. I turned toward the door. My hands were shaking again. But not from fear. From rage. From the weight of 27 years of silence cracking open all at once. Before I stepped out, I turned back to her. If you're lying again, Clara, I'll find out. She didn't respond. I stepped into the cold. The wind picked up, sharper now. The photo was back in my pocket, but it felt heavier than before, like it had absorbed everything she'd said and everything she hadn't. As I reached my car, I pulled it out again, looked at June's face, then at Clara's, and I thought, if some of them came back, why did no one ever say a word? The drive home was a blur. Every streetlight felt like a question mark. Every stop sign a warning I ignored. I didn't turn the radio on. I didn't want music. I didn't want noise. I wanted answers. I kept hearing Clara's voice in my head. Some of them came back. It haunted me. Not just what it meant, but what it didn't say. Who came back? Where are they now? Why didn't they speak up? And who told them not to? I pulled into my driveway just as the sky began to bruise with the dusk. The porch light flickered on like it was relieved to see me. I stepped inside, locked the door behind me, and went straight to the box in the attic. The one I hadn't opened in years. It was buried under blankets, old yearbooks, and a broken lamp we never threw away. I carried it down like I was handling something alive. Inside, every file, every photo, every newspaper clipping I'd saved about Red Creek and the bus that vanished. 15 children, one driver, gone without a trace. The headlines had screamed their shock back then. Local tragedy at summer camp. No leads in school bus disappearance. FBI expands search area. But time had dulled them. The ink had faded. The photos had curled. Even the town's memory had yellowed at the edges. But not mine. I spread them out on the kitchen table like puzzle pieces. My hands moved with a kind of reverence, as if each item held breath I needed to resuscitate. June's face stared up from every angle, her last school portrait, a snapshot from the spring picnic. And then, this new photo, the one from the mailbox. I placed it at the center, the eye of the storm. I stared at it until I noticed something I hadn't before. A shadow, just behind the tree line, near the top right corner, barely visible. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. A tall figure, not a child, not a counselor, too still, too sharp. I got my magnifying glass. It was a man. You couldn't see the face, but the stance, the outline, it matched what Clara had described. The one who gave her the photo. He'd been there when it was taken, and he wasn't part of the school staff. I grabbed my phone and called Anita. Come over, I said. Now. She arrived 20 minutes later, still in her scrubs, her hair pulled into a tired bun. "I brought coffee," she said, holding out a travel cup. "I need more than caffeine." We sat. I showed her everything. When she saw the photo, her face changed. "I know him," she whispered. I froze. "What?" She pointed to the shadow. "I'm not certain, but I think that's Victor Hanley." "Who is that?" She exhaled. "He worked private security for the state back in the 90s, specialized in off-the-books operations. My uncle worked in state police. Said Hanley's name came up when things needed quiet handling. He disappeared after 1999. Just vanished." I stared at her. "You think he was involved?" "I think someone wanted to scare Clara, and someone wanted you to see this. And it might be the same person. But why now?" She paused. "That's what we need to find out." We stayed up that night, piecing things together, rereading testimonies, cross-checking staff rosters, trying to find a seam that hadn't been sealed shut. And then Anita said something that cracked the case wider. What if the ones who came back weren't allowed to remember? I blinked. "You mean what? Some kind of trauma block? Or something done to them? Drugs? Hypnosis? Threats? We don't know. But if they were just kids, and they were told the others went home early, or the trip ended early, they might have believed it." I felt the chill down my spine before she finished her sentence. "And now they're adults," I whispered, "living their lives, not knowing they were part of something buried." Exactly. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "So we need to find one of them." Anita nodded. I reached for the folder marked Camp Attendees. June had 3 close friends on that trip. One moved out of state. One passed away in a car accident 6 years ago. The last one, Elena Bright, still lived 2 towns over. She'd never spoken publicly, never gave a statement, nothing. It was like her name just disappeared from the narrative. Until now. "We find her," I said. "We talk to her." And Anita said what I'd been trying not to admit. "If she remembers." The room fell into silence. Only the clock ticked, a steady reminder that time hadn't stopped just because I had. I looked at June's photo again. Her laugh frozen a half second before whatever happened next. I whispered, not to Anita, but to the photo. "If they made you forget, Elena, it's time someone helped you remember." Elena Bright lived in a blue house with peeling shutters and a "Beware of Dogs" sign that had seen better days. The kind of house that looked like it used to hold joy, but now just held habits. Anita parked 2 houses down, just in case. We didn't know what we were walking into. I held the photo in my coat pocket, like it might start burning if I touched it too long. There was a tightness in my chest that I couldn't breathe around. Maybe because this was the first time in 27 years I wasn't just remembering June. I was following her. We knocked. No answer. We were about to leave when the door creaked open. A woman stood behind the screen. Late 30s, slouched posture, hair tied back in a way that said, "I don't care anymore." She looked at us like we might be salespeople or debt collectors, but something flickered in her eyes when she saw me. "Miriam Dorsey?" I nodded. She opened the screen and stepped back. "I figured it might be you." We stepped in. The living room was dim, but not from lack of light. The curtains were drawn too tight, like she didn't want the world to look in, or memories to look out. She motioned to the couch. "I don't talk about the camp." I didn't sit. "I'm not here to force you, but I need to ask about the last day, about who came back." and who didn't. She stared at me for a long time, not with hostility, with confusion. I don't remember. I nodded slowly. What do you remember? She hesitated, then sat down and rubbed her arms like a chill had crept into her bones. I remember the drive up. I remember the lake. I remember bees. There were always bees. I remember June had this red jacket. She let me wear it one night because I forgot mine. She stopped, blinked. I don't remember the last day. Anita leaned forward gently. Did anyone ever help you talk through it? Therapists? Police? Elena laughed, but it cracked halfway out. No one helped. They just told me I was lucky to be back. And then, nothing. I moved schools. My mom pretended it didn't happen. My dad left. I've had dreams, though, for years. Same one. I'm standing in the woods, and there's music. Music? A song I've never heard in real life. Like a nursery rhyme, but slower. Wrong. My mouth went dry. She continued, eyes glassy now. And there's someone behind me, not touching me, just watching. Always the same height, always wearing a hat, but I never see his face. I wake up before I can. I took out the photo, placed it on the coffee table. Elena, this was sent to me last week. It's from the camp. That's you in the corner. That's June, next to you. She leaned forward slowly, then froze. That's not right. What's not right? That wasn't a group photo day. That wasn't part of the trip. That was the night the power went out. There was a storm. We weren't even supposed to be outside. She pointed to the shadowy figure near the trees. I saw him. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. In your dream? No, that night. We were all silent. And then Elena stood, walked to the hallway, returned with an old sketchbook. I started drawing it after the dreams got bad. I never showed anyone. She flipped the book open. The drawing wasn't artistic. It was frantic. Pencil marks too hard, as if trying to tear through memory. But it was him. The shape, the hat, the same angle, watching. This isn't just memory loss, Anita whispered. It's suppression. Trauma that was never processed. Elena whispered something I almost didn't hear. I think we weren't supposed to come back. I stared at her. What do you mean? I think someone changed their mind, or there was a deal. I don't know. But something happened. And some of us got out, and the rest didn't. She started to cry. I've never told anyone this. I didn't think I was allowed to. I didn't think it would be safe. I reached across the table and took her hand. It's safe now. You're not alone. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Because if someone went to such lengths to hide this, to erase memories, to send warnings, then we had just broken the surface, and we didn't know what waited underneath. I didn't sleep that night. Anita offered to stay, but I told her no. I needed space. I needed silence. But the silence in my house had changed. It no longer cradled me. It stared at me. I left the photo on the kitchen table. I couldn't look at it, but I couldn't hide it either. Like it had started breathing the moment it came into this house. June. Red jacket, smile tilted slightly to one side, and Clara Wexler, standing where she swore she never was. I opened the cupboard and pulled out an old box labeled Camp. It was full of newspaper clippings, old PTA flyers, and laminated schedules. I had gone through them so many times over the years that the corners were frayed and soft. But I wasn't looking for comfort this time. I was looking for cracks. I found one. A logistics sheet. Bus assignments. There were 3 chaperones assigned to each bus. On bus 2, the one June was on, 3 names were printed: Mr. Levine, Mrs. Castillo, and C. Wexler. I stared at it for a long time, and then I got in the car. The Wexler house was exactly as I remembered: cream-colored siding, 2 rocking chairs on the porch, bird feeder swaying gently in the wind. It had that warm, small-town facade, the kind that covers over whatever's been buried underneath for decades. I rang the bell. It took longer than it should have, and when the door opened, there she was. Clara Wexler. Older now, slower. Her eyes still sharp, though. Still the kind of eyes that had scanned every lunchbox and permission slip for 20 years. She looked at me like she wasn't surprised. "Miriam." "Hello, Clara." She opened the door wider, but didn't smile. "I suppose you're not here for tea." I stepped inside. The hallway smelled of lavender and old paper. Family portraits lined the walls, but none of them were new. It was as if time had politely stopped visiting. "I have questions." "I'm sure you do." I took out the photo and placed it on the entryway table. Her eyes didn't flinch, but her hand twitched, just slightly. "This photo says you were at the camp." She was quiet. "Do you remember that day?" I pressed. She finally spoke. "I remember more than I want to." "Then tell me, because you told the board you weren't there. You told me you weren't there. So why is your face in that photo?" She walked slowly to the sitting room. I followed. She didn't ask me to sit, so I didn't. She stood at the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel. "They asked me to lie." "Who?" She didn't answer. I stepped closer. "What happened to our children, Clara?" Her jaw clenched. "There was something at that camp." "What do you mean, something?" "It wasn't the counselors. It wasn't the weather. There was something already there, waiting. We didn't understand it." I felt like the floor was tilting under me. "You're saying it wasn't human?" She looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw fear. Not the dramatic kind, but the deep, quiet kind that sits under your skin for years. "We were told it was a natural sinkhole, but I saw it. I saw what was inside." My voice dropped to a whisper. "What did you see?" She shook her head, tears welling but never falling. "I don't have the words. And if I did, you wouldn't want to hear them. Try me." She turned away. "They didn't die, Miriam." I froze. "What?" "They disappeared, not into the ground, but out, like the air shifted. Like the world lost grip." I couldn't breathe. "But then how did some of the kids make it back?" She looked up at the ceiling. "I don't know. Maybe it made a mistake. Maybe something let them go. But those who stayed, I don't think they're gone. I think they're somewhere else." The room suddenly felt colder. I thought of Elena's dreams, of the man in the hat, of the song. "They lied to us," I said. "Yes. They buried the truth." She nodded. "And you helped them." She didn't deny it. "I was trying to protect the town, the school, the other children. You protected yourself." She closed her eyes. "You're right." I stepped back. "You still have time to do the right thing." "I know." but her voice sounded far away. I left the house without another word. When I got to the car, my hands were shaking. I didn't know where to go next, but I knew the next name on the bus assignment list, Mr. Levine. And I knew something else too. This wasn't about one missing girl anymore. This was about all of them, and the thin veil we all pretended was closure was about to tear. I found Mr. Levine living 3 towns over, in a faded apartment complex just off the interstate. The hallway smelled like microwaved soup and dust. I hadn't seen him in almost 3 decades. When he opened the door, he didn't recognize me at first. Then his eyes changed, like a drawer inside his chest had slid open, and everything he tried to forget spilled out all at once. "Miriam Dorsey," he said quietly. "I wondered when you'd come." He didn't invite me in, just stepped aside. The apartment was small, dimly lit. A recliner, some books stacked on the floor, and a yellowing map of Vermont pinned to the wall. "You still teaching?" I asked. He gave a humorless laugh. "Not for a long time, not after that." I handed him the photo. He didn't even look at it. "I already know what's in there," he said. "Then you know why I'm here." He sat down, hands trembling. "They told me not to speak. They said it would confuse the community. That grief needed to be manageable." I stood in the center of the room, not letting him look away. "Clara said it wasn't an accident." His mouth tightened. "It wasn't." I waited. We set up tents by the lake. It was supposed to be overnight. S'mores, ghost stories, all that crap. But just before dinner, the sky changed. I mean, it didn't darken. It shifted, like someone turned a page in the sky. I said nothing. The kids were playing near the woods. Some said they heard music, not like a speaker, not like a flute. Something older, rhythmic, drawn out. My skin went cold. They started walking into the trees. Not running, not laughing, just walking, like sleepwalking, like it wasn't even a choice. "And you just let them go?" "No, we ran after them, screamed, called their names." He rubbed his face like he was trying to wipe off the memory. But the forest was different. You'd step forward, and the ground behind you was gone. We couldn't move right. We couldn't even think straight. "What did you see?" "I don't know. Shapes, maybe. Shadows that flickered like candlelight, but they weren't made of light. They moved like they had eyes." My throat tightened. "And then what?" "We lost time. Hours. It was like a fog inside your brain. When we came to, the police were there, and 15 children were missing." "June," I whispered. He nodded. I never stopped seeing her red jacket. It haunted me. I reached into my coat and pulled out something I hadn't shown anyone. June's friendship bracelet. I found it in the crawl space of the house, years after, twisted into a corner, like it had been left there on purpose. He looked at it, and his face turned to ash. "You shouldn't have that," he said. "Why?" "Because it wasn't there before. Because something brought it back." I blinked. "You're saying—" "I don't think they're lost. I think they're watching." The room felt heavier. "Why now?" I asked. "Why is this starting again?" He looked straight at me. "Because someone opened the door again." I drove home in silence. The wind had picked up. Dry leaves spun in loops on the pavement, like they were trying to write something I couldn't read. When I got back, the porch light was flickering. Inside the house, I felt the weight of 30 years press against the walls. I went to the kitchen, turned on the light, and stood by the table. The photo was gone, but in its place was a drawing, crayon, red and blue, a stick figure in a red jacket, standing in a forest, and beside it, figures drawn in all black, no faces, just long arms, reaching. The doorbell rang. I froze. My legs moved on their own. I opened the door. There was no one there. But on the porch step, wet from the rain, was a backpack. Small, familiar. I knelt down, touched the zipper. Inside was a lunchbox, cracked, faded, June written in Sharpie on the side, and something else. A cassette tape, handwritten on the label, Mom. I brought it inside, sat at the table, slipped it into the old player I hadn't touched in years. Static. Then a girl's voice. Hi, Mom. My heart stopped. If you're hearing this, it means I tried. I tried to come back. Tears blurred my vision. I don't know where I am, but I remember your voice. I remember the song you used to sing when I was scared. I hum it sometimes. I think it helps. Silence. A breath. There are others here. Some are kind, some not. But I'm not giving up. The tape clicked. I sat there, not breathing. Outside, the wind howled, and in my chest, something ancient stirred. Hope. Sharp, painful, and alive. Not closure, but something better. A beginning.